What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports hall of fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Pat Geraghty, President and CEO of GuideWell, whose family of companies include Florida Blue, Triple S Management, and GuideWell Health. The collective is at the forefront of healthcare transformation, serving more than 38.5 million people across the United States, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Pat's strategic version earned GuideWell recognition as the model of strategic reinvention, featured in Harvard Business School's curriculum. Under his direction, the company has achieved notable accolades, from being an exceptional place to work, praised for its commitment to diversity, and employee satisfaction. Today, I'm excited to dive into lessons he learned playing basketball and football.
Owning it, sharing it, talking about it. I thought I needed to be perfect. One of the things I tried to do is make my boss think I was perfect. And it was the worst thing to do. Saying what you either didn't do well or made a mistake was empowering. Now I do that regularly. I'll say to my team, hey, I made a judgment on this. I was wrong. Here's what I was thinking at the time, but I made the wrong judgment and I own it.
Pat, thanks for joining us.
Don, it's a pleasure to be with you.
It is always fun. I've gotten to know you over the last few months and doing some work with you and your team, and sitting there at a table with you, kind of hearing a little of some of the ways that sports affected you. It became really apparent that you would be a masterful guest. So no extra pressure. We're expecting big things. Just letting you know.
All right. I'll try and live up to that.
Okay. Looking at your childhood, born in Brooklyn, but grew up in Yorktown, New York. 4 siblings, Irish, Italian, Catholic family. You talked about your childhood debate-filled. I love that. But there was one thing that stuck out to me, was a phrase that your father used to say to you every single morning.
Yes, my dad would say, make it a great day. It makes all the difference. I had the huge benefit of having 2 great parents. My dad was the first and only of his 5 siblings to go to college, and he also went to law school.
What?
And he grew up in a house that was a 1-bedroom apartment. His parents had the 1 bedroom, and the sheet down the middle of the room was boys on one side, girls on the other side, and never felt poor. And my mom commuted from Brooklyn to Barnard via subways and all of that. So these folks knew what it meant to work and to advance.
Yeah.
I used debate-filled because in our family, respect and love was always there, but we had a nuanced difference of opinion. And when you came to the table for dinner, we were talking about the subjects of the day, the current events of the day, and you had to have your facts together. You had to have thought through your position. And each of us took turns talking about how we saw things. Our parents encouraged an active, lively, engaged discussion of what was going on in the world.
Powerful.
I absolutely don't mind being challenged. In fact, I encourage it. I love when somebody comes well prepared and has thought through their position. In fact, at the end of the day, if they have better arguments or a better description of the situation at hand, I'd be foolish not to go with their recommendations. So it creates an environment where I think people understand they contribute because it's not a top-down environment. It's a merit-based environment where the best ideas carry the day. If we start with make it a great day, to me, that's living with intention. When you hear make it a great day as a young kid, initially you roll in your eyes. But over time, it sort of sinks in that you have impact on your day.
It's your responsibility.
You have the ability to influence what happens to you.
Yeah.
Or at a minimum, you have an ability to influence how you react to what happens to you and how you internalize the lesson, if you will.
Right.
That's taking action and being accountable for what's happening in your world. As a leader, I believe that if I share where I come from, what drives me, how I see the world, and in kind, want that back from my team. So I'm listening and I'm getting an understanding of what motivates each of the individuals on our team, then we have a much better understanding of each other. And it really comes out in the way we do our work. So one of our very intentional things is that our team reflects the people we serve. So if you look at the diversity of Florida, you will see that reflected across my leadership team at all different levels. That is the best way to really have people at the table, or as they say in Hamilton, in the room where the decisions are being made.
Right.
That makes all the difference about being really tuned into your customer, understanding their needs, and listening so that you continue to gain that information that makes you better and better.
Yeah. When you and I were sitting there at your event and we were talking sports, you shared that when you were growing up, there were a few things that had more impact or that you enjoyed more than being a point guard on the basketball team, quarterback on the football team. You were designated leader before you ever accepted the role you have today. Tell me a story. Tell me a story about a lesson learned on those courts or fields that you still think of today, something that happened to you that maybe left a mark.
You know, Don, my junior year in high school, I was set to be the quarterback of the football team, and I got injured in the second game, missed a few games, and then came back and got hurt again. My junior year was sort of marred with not being out there, and then watching as we had a team that went into the fourth quarter leading in 7 of 8 games and only won 1 of 8 games. It was a team that wasn't fully committed. It was a team that didn't have the senior leadership that it needed to have to be successful. And during the summer before senior year, we pulled all the players together, myself and a couple other team leaders, and we said, this is on us. We need to be dedicated. So we practiced as a unit all summer long in preparation for that senior year. By the time the coaches were catching up with us, we had been fully dedicated. We'd spent the summer working together, and we made a pledge for nobody on that team to drink during our senior season. That pledge got tested quickly. We had one of our friends who was in a car accident right before the school year started and right before our first game. And he ended up injured from the car accident. A young lady who was in the car with him died. So our senior class came together for a funeral before we were even in school. 3 weeks into the year, another 2 teammates after a game broke the pledge. They hit a tree, the driver survived, and the passenger died. So we'd lost 2 of our classmates and 1 of our teammates before the season was a month old. We redoubled the pledge and got everybody focused on this is something that's serious, and we're going to play this season in memory of these other teammates. We really got people to think about how serious this pledge was, and it made all the difference. We were winning all season long in some tough games. We went to the championship game. Our high school had never won the league championship, and we went right down to the wire. They're up 14-13.
You're down 1.
We go 90 yards to their 5. No time left. So we kicked the field goal to win the game. The referee under the goalpost signals good. The referee behind me, the head referee, signals no good.
Boy.
And the refs huddle at the 50 to discuss it. Now they decide the fate of the game, and the head referee says, my call, instead of the ref under the goalpost who's looking up with the best angle. He overrules him, and we lose by 1. This is crushing, given where we had come from, given all those things. My dad was really good at being in the moment and helping me process through that kind of thing. And you learn how to take that defeat and turn it into, well, what are we going to do about that? Redouble commitment, making sure you're not in the last second and trying to get that last second field goal, that you've done other things to have been successful maybe earlier in that game. It's one of those moments that absolutely stays with you. I just had my 65th birthday, and my brother, of course, brought it up.
Well, of course.
Of course.
No one can bring up a painful moment like a brother.
That's right.
But I love the lesson there. Too often we get focused on the missed free throw in the last 5 seconds. Was the referee right? Was he wrong? But is there something you could have done earlier?
That's right.
It's not about usually a single play. Single plays are amplified. How do you take a lesson like that in what you do today as you run a 365-day-a-year enterprise, because you all are serving so many people, in your leadership style?
That's a great question, Don. There isn't a project that anyone's ever gone through that hasn't had bumps, curves in the way, unexpected events, things that look like setbacks. So preparing and staying positive, thinking about what your alternatives are, not going into something with a single point of failure. You need to know that you have options. You need to know what those options are. In the moment, you cannot be a defeated individual, especially if you're in a leadership position. People look to leaders for how are they reacting to this difficult moment. And if your hands go up and you're using foul language and you're the leader that just wants to throw the towel in, your team will react to all of those things. So it really is about staying calm. Our team did a little celebration for my 65th birthday, and one person said, I've known you for 25 years. I've never heard you raise your voice. You don't have to do that, but you do need to speak with conviction.
Yeah.
It's how do you process the tough news? How do you stay convicted? How do you think in the moment about the alternatives that are available to you? How do you use all your assets and resources to make sure that everybody who can contribute to the result has a voice in helping craft that answer?
Right.
One of my great role models in life was John Wooden. John Wooden with a rolled up program in his hand, but you didn't see him screaming a lot. You know, he was purposeful. He had planned well. He had done all the preparation. And then in the moment, he kept himself grounded. There's a great example of leadership. You have many people that influence your leadership style, and you try and take certain things from them. A leader like that, you take great things from their example of how to stay calm and how to stay in the moment. One of the other things I learned, and I don't know exactly where I picked it up from, but it's about visioning. I don't think there was a game I played where I didn't play out that game in my mind. Now, they didn't always go exactly the way you thought about it in your mind, but there were times where I was in the middle of a play and said, I've been here before. I've done this, and I knew what I needed to do, because you actually spent the time ahead of the game thinking about the circumstances that could present themselves. Some of that was, you looked at game film, but then you went and you thought about it, and then I went to sleep dreaming about it. I mean, I was consumed by the preparation process. Big meetings. I've got a board of directors meeting. I think about how that's going to play. Who might ask what? How do I want to respond to the tricky question or the particular circumstance? Who on my team ought to be involved in some of those conversations? So preparation, not just know your content, but think it through in terms of how are the plays going to reveal themselves?
Right. And as you know your content, if you know it well, you also know its weaknesses.
That's right.
You'll know what the question will probably be.
our premise, sports prepares people to be better leaders. There couldn't be a better role model for this premise than you. I mean, obviously being a quarterback, being a point guard, two incredible leadership positions played a great role for you. You just mentioned John Wooden, and I even sent you, I believe, a copy of the book that Coach Wooden and I wrote together because he was so impactful in my life as well.
Yeah.
One thing about Coach Wooden was he never wanted to be the first coach to call a timeout. He believed that if you prepared well, you should be able to fight through a series of bad plays and correct your own behaviors on the court. You don't need a coach interrupting the flow. And he also thought it made the other coach a little worried that John Wood never called a timeout. Oh my gosh, like I better call one just because I need to stop it. It's the detail work that we can do that makes such a difference.
It does. It does. He was a great example for all of us. And I've been blessed to have many great examples along the path.
Yeah.
My JV basketball coach, Ed Jantz, took a real interest in me and helped me build confidence in myself. It helped me understand the importance of the game and how it translated to my life. Really appreciated him. I had another football coach, Tom Conklin, very influential in my life, somebody who understood me well, knew when I was down, knew when I needed to be kicked in the pants, knew when I needed a little encouragement. Coaches like that made a big difference. There were other coaches like in Summer League. I had the great chance to be at Jack Curran's Catholic New York City basketball camp, which was at the Peekskill Military Academy. And I actually had Mike Dunleavy as the coach of my team.
Oh my God.
At that session. Incredible coaches. And my dad was a St. John's grad. So he came to the last day of the program because they were doing a foul shooting contest and Luke Carnesecca was leading it. I volunteered to be the first guy to shoot at each new basket. I wanted to put the pressure on the rest of the guys who I was competing with. I actually had one of those days you dream about. In the fifth round, I finally won this with 35 for 35.
Wow.
My dad had walked in the gym when I was making my last five, and Carnesecca just like ran and jumped in my arms. I was carrying Lou Carnesecca, and he was carrying this trophy he was bringing to me. And it was a great moment for my father. And it was a great moment for us to share.
I love the lesson in that. You know what? Be the first. In fact, set the bar, set the pressure. You mentioned a football coach who understood you well.
Yeah.
What has that taught you about the importance of knowing your team and that not everyone gets the same treatment every day? We want to treat them fairly, but people need different things.
Yeah, no question about it. There's a concept that some people have of fair means I'm the same to everybody. My concept of fair is I need to be the leader that person needs me to be in that moment. I've really tried to get to know my team quite well, both their work life, but their personal life, what matters to them, what motivates them. We do some things where we share. Periodically, we'll do some team building kinds of events. Amy Ruth is head of human resources. She's really good at getting people to open up and talk about themselves. I find that vulnerability in a leader is really valuable quality. When you share your vulnerability with your team, it doesn't make you a weaker leader. It actually makes you a stronger leader. People are drawn to that. We encourage the sharing of vulnerability and being candid. As an early manager, I thought I needed to be perfect. One of the things I tried to do is make my boss think I was perfect. And it was the worst thing to do. Actually, saying what you either didn't do well or made a mistake was empowering. Owning it, sharing it, talking about it. Now I do that regularly. I'll say to my team, hey, I made a judgment on this. I was wrong. Here's what I was thinking at the time, but I made the wrong judgment and I own it.
And that allows them to do the same.
Exactly. If you role model it, it really encourages people to do the same in their leadership. And it's made us a much stronger team because we don't try and hide things from each other.
Wow. You know, I want to talk a little bit about Guidewell and about what you're doing there and your leadership. You have been really active in a lot of transformational work within the organization. Restructuring's hard,
Yes.
trying to recraft the way an organization is going to go to market. What can you teach us from some of what you've learned in these leadership journeys that has allowed you to lead a team through some really tough moments like the reworking of your strategies and other things?
If you want people to change, you have to change. Change has to come and be demonstrated by the top of the organization. When I first arrived here in Florida, one of the first things I did was I walked in the building and I put on a headset and I listened to customer service phone calls.
That was your first stop, was to listen to customer service.
That's right.
Wow.
I wanted to hear what our customers were saying. I also wanted to see how our front line was handling the customer. I did that before I interviewed the vice presidents. A picture of me with a headset on in the customer service division virally went across the organization. People were like, wow. So I didn't even have to sort of point to it. It went all over the place because it happened. And it's become part of the process that leaders listen to customer service calls as a regular thing. That keeps you in touch with the front line. It keeps you in touch with the challenges the people we have engaged with our customers have to deal with. So we've done lots of things to make their world better, because once you've experienced it, you realize, wow, we better arm our front line with the best of the tools. So that's a piece of the process. I went into my very first board meeting and I was told, our board loves the board book that we send to them. This thing is sacred. There was a consultant who was meeting with our team and rehearsing the board meeting. So I'm like, we're going to go into this board meeting and we're going to verbatim spit back to the board what this consultant just walked us through. And the board is going to work off of this big book. Well, I got rid of the consultant immediately because I wanted the board meeting to be real. I wanted it to be a discussion and interaction with the board, and not, here's 20 pages of a deck and I'm going to talk to you by reading through this deck. That's not what any board wants to do. What are the critical questions? What are the themes? What are you working on? Let's have a dialogue. It was a very different way for this organization to think about the board meeting. I asked all the board members, I said, when I was looking at this assignment, I went on your webpage and I wanted to see who the board members were. Your pictures are not out there. I want your pictures on our webpage. I want you to say, why are you on this board? Why is it important for you to be on this board? So a commitment statement. If that's uncomfortable to any of you, then maybe we don't have a good fit. But this is what I think we need to have for people who are on our board. And it will be powerful to the organization to have it there. And then I've been told that you guys like these printed books. I'd rather take the board meeting online. And the board went, oh, thank goodness. We're lugging around these books. We'd love to do online. Other boards we're on, we do it online. So there were these urban myths that you sort of had to take down. But I was able to walk into a first big town hall meeting here and say, the board of directors now is doing the board meeting online. They've got their pictures out there. They've got their commitment statements out there. We're doing the meeting in dialogue. We're not doing the meeting in a rehearsed script. So the board's made 4 major changes, and we're only 2 weeks into this. Now we're going to talk about how the rest of us are going to change. And when you can say the board did this, and now here's what leadership is going to do, now you can make asks of other people. But too often change starts with the front line's going to do this, and we've decided this for you. And that's the wrong way to lead change in my mind.
Wow, what a great lesson. If you want everyone else to adapt, you need to embrace it. If you embrace it first, then others can do the same.
And then they'll carry the message for you. My first couple weeks in the organization, I had somebody walk into one of our team meetings who was, empowered in the organization, in the human resources group. And he says, a lot of people here don't like the fact that there's executive parking next to the building. In fact, the executive parking was closer to the building than the parking for people who were physically challenged. It had an arm that came down that only the executives had the swipe to get in. So I said, okay, what will it take to change that? Someone suggests that we put a committee together to study it. And I said, no. I meant, can we remove the arms off of the lever tonight?
Mm.
Well, yeah. I said, good. I want the arms off the lever tonight. The next morning at 6 a.m., we had an employee come in, saw that there was no arm restricting them from driving to the best parking spot in the building. And they parked closest to the building, got out of their car, took a selfie, parked up near the building. It went viral across the organization. It happened in less than 24 hours from when it was suggested. It's a new day.
Mm.
We're going to take action. We're not going to wait. We're not going to study things ad nauseum. We're going to move forward. Very quickly thereafter, we made obviously the parking closest to the building for those physically challenged.
Right.
And starting the next lot out, it was all democracy. So whenever you got in, you parked with what was left. And there is no designated executive parking anywhere on this campus.
Wow. Sometimes the littlest things send the greatest messages.
Yeah, it really did. And people carried that message themselves. And that's a bit of the low hanging fruit that gets you momentum. Now you're changing, and now you got people talking about changing. And now you can really start to dig in around stuff that's very meaningful in the business and really connected to the customers we're trying to serve.
You just used the word that's really important to me. It's momentum. I've been in a multi-year study of the science and the art of creating momentum and taking advantage of moments. In sports, sometimes it's an interception, it's a big shot, it's a spark that suddenly turns the tide, if you will. In your leadership, have you ever seen a spark, something that's happened that you believe is kind of reverse trend or maybe accelerated a trend for you, created that momentum?
Absolutely. As you know, Guidewell is a mutual insurance holding company.
Right.
Florida Blue is one of the companies under Guidewell. When we started this path, there were only two mutual insurance holding companies in our state. They were both in property and casualty. Nobody had used that vehicle in healthcare. The two companies that had gone down that path took 18 months and 24 months to get it accomplished. We announced we were going to restructure with Guidewell as the holding company, all the various things, the leaders, the directors, and our proposal to redesign the company under a holding company. We announced it at our March board meeting. We got approval in September. So we did in 6 months what nobody had ever done in less than 18 months in our state. We were the first in the country to move into a mutual insurance holding company. It actually freed up for us the ability to move capital, to invest it more quickly, to diversify the business that we have here. So it's been a very valuable vehicle to us. And yet we did it really, really quickly. People here would have told you we're slow. We don't work across divisions. I made a purposeful demonstration for folks about how fast it was done, how many parts of the organization had to contribute to get it done. No easy pathway to get it done. Yet when we went to our membership, 93% of our members voted in favor of putting this mutual insurance holding company in place. And they're the owners of our organization. So we were breaking down sort of the urban myths about how we moved as a company. We committed to do this, and we committed to do it faster than anyone had done it. And we were successful in a very large project. It turned the way people thought about who we were and what we were capable of.
Both internally and externally.
Absolutely. You got to get those early wins on the low-hanging fruit, and then you got to keep it rolling. And you have to remind people of the things that they are accomplishing. If you don't celebrate and take recognition of the changes and the progress, people can get blinded to it. So it's really important to not only have momentum, but really shine a light on it. I believe in the power of storytelling. I think a narrative actually moves the mindset. When you can put in good narrative form what you're about, what you're accomplishing, that is powerful to people. You can pile statistics on folks, goes over them. It doesn't necessarily get absorbed, but a good narrative, a great story, that sticks. And so we are very intentional about storytelling. Our communications team is fabulous at leading storytelling and positioning our leaders, not just me, but across the leadership team, to be storytellers, to make sure we're reinforcing the messages and the learnings and the things that impact our customers. You got to make it real and personal if you really want to move the way people think about things. If you can connect it in a way that people say, oh, yeah, I see that. I see that for myself. I see that for my family. I get the importance of doing things that way for your customers, then it really works.
Wow. There was a speech that you gave where you shared a story about a promotion your mother received.
Yeah, my mom was ahead of her time. She graduated from Barnard. She was a math whiz, and she went right to work for Metropolitan Life. She stayed working until she had her third of her 5 kids. I have 3 sisters, and in our family we had all chores gender neutral. I grew up in that kind of an environment, but before she had children, she gets this promotion to be a supervisor in the actuarial division. And she was told, we won't be able to pay you what we paid your predecessor. He had a family to support. You're in a different circumstance. We're not going to pay you the same amount of money. And it did not sit well with her.
I bet that would make Amy Ruth lose her mind right now.
Oh, my goodness. Totally. First time I heard this story, I was maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, something like that. And I'm doing the dishes and my mom is standing behind me and she's making sure I understand that I have an opportunity in my life to make sure that never happens in any place where I am. So it's been really critical to me that we have pay equity, gender equity across ethnicity, across gender. I mean, it's just very important to me that we are an organization that does things the right way.
Boy, I love it. How great of your mom to say, hey, by the way, this happened years ago. I'm sure she carried a little something with that, but at the same time, she knew, I'm going to tell Pat in a way that one day Pat may remember this story. What a great lesson.
She definitely knew how to deliver a message, and she was somebody who spoke softly but carried a lot of weight. You knew that it was coming from conviction.
I love it. So most of the folks I've worked with in a career of being around really successful athletes, leaders, executives, have a little chip on their shoulder. Some moment, some stage, someone said something to them where they were told they had no chance. You're not going to be the right person for this job, whatever it is. Is there a chip on Pat Geraghty's shoulder somewhere?
Sure there is. Yeah, fairly early in my career when I was starting to make the rise in leadership, I was at Prudential Insurance Company in their health division. And I had a vice president in that organization tell me, you're too nice a guy. You won't be able to be successful being a nice guy. It's not in your DNA. So change your expectations about where you're going because you're too nice for senior leadership. In that moment, I said to myself, I'm going to show you.
The nice guy, and you really came out right there, huh?
I said, you know what? I am a nice guy, but I also have a firm spine. And I don't believe you have to be a mean guy to get to the places you want to get to. It's really a matter of how you handle yourself. And you learn from leaders what you like and what you don't like. And that's not the kind of leader I'll ever be. I can do it successfully. Parenthetically, the next company I worked for, that individual was at a lower level in that organization than I was hired in at. So there was some universe that corrected things over time.
My favorite part of that is parenthetically. By the way, everyone with a chip, Tom Brady can name every quarterback that was drafted ahead of him. He can give you their career statistics as well.
Yeah, you do kind of keep track of when you get a zinger and say, okay, We'll see about that.
I love it. In 30 years of interviewing leaders and talking to folks, one question I've always asked is there something you do every day that you believe gives you a competitive advantage? Something that you have built into your routines that gives you a little extra
I have a couple of habits that I do every day. First of all, I try and see sunrise every day,
mm.
and I work out every morning. For years, it clears my head. Great way to deal with tensions. Great way to get your body ready for the rigors of the day and the challenges. It really helps me deal with the stress in a constructive way and be ready to go when I get to the office.
See sunrise every morning.
Yeah.
You're a better man than me. I do have to say, I'm a huge fan of your LinkedIn posts.
Oh, thank you.
You don't just post about what's happening at the company, you post about why it matters. You share leadership lessons in much of what you do. So I'm going to suggest people should follow you on LinkedIn. But beyond that, are there places they could learn more about you and the company?
Yeah, so I would have said LinkedIn is the best way to do it, but certainly we have a document out now called our impact statement, which is on our webpage.
Mm-hmm.
We'll tell you what GuideWell does, and it matters to us greatly how we're lifting up communities all across Florida and all across the other service areas that we're involved in. It's really been so gratifying to me. I know it was almost an unspoken promise between myself and my parents that wherever I went in life, I'd use my platform to improve the conditions as I find them. And we as an organization have identified the 5 most challenged zip codes in the state of Florida. Collectively, with a lot of other partners, we're making a difference in those zip codes around education, housing, nutrition, health opportunities in life. It is a comprehensive effort to change those 5 zip codes. And in so doing, then move on to the next set of zip codes so that we leave the places that we serve, the places that we work, better than we found them.
Wow. When you restructured, you absolutely chose the right word. You are definitely guiding well.
Thank you.
Pat, I thank you today for being a corporate competitor.
Thank you, Don. It was a pleasure to be with you.
That was so much fun. I loved talking to Pat. I knew he'd be a great guest. I had no idea it'd be this great. A couple of big takeaways for me. I love the parking story. He hears, as a new leader, one of the issues out there is that people have wondered, why do executives get the best in class parking spaces? And why do they have a little parking arm that keeps everyone else away from their ability to park at the very best spots? The idea was, let's form a committee. And he said, absolutely not. Let's take the arm off the thing and let anybody park there. The idea of being early as a leader, decisive, taking action, showing that this was, in fact, a new day, was the kind of leadership that allowed people to feel comfortable knowing that they could actually bring concepts and bring challenges to him as a leader in a way that would be really great. But then he said, if you want people to change in your organization, you must change first. Most leaders command change to start at the bottom of the org chart. They say, well, we're going to make these changes and they're going to start down here. No, he wanted to be the catalyst for change. He talked about his first day in the office. Before he even got a chance to interview his vice presidents, he stopped at the customer service area, put on a headset to listen to customer service calls, and how that's changed the culture of the organization. Now that's what leaders do regularly. They go in and listen to what customers are saying to their employees. My third great takeaway was that football story where the referee made a call. Clearly, you can tell Pat still disagrees with the call, is still pretty convinced they were wrong. But at the end of the day, instead of sitting and blaming the referees, they made a quick recognition that there were points earlier in the game when things could have gone better, it could have gone differently. It wasn't about that kick. It wasn't about that call. It was about other moments. How you react in those moments. You can't be defeated. As he pointed out, others are watching how you react in those moments. Really powerful. Loved it. And then I'm going to give a bonus one here because I thought this was fun as well. When he talked about, as an early manager, how desperately he wanted to constantly be perfect, how he wanted always to be right. because he wanted his boss to think he was perfect. What he came to realize was that he would be a far better leader if he opened up. There was some vulnerability to the way he carried himself, and that letting others know, hey, I made a decision. And in fact, it was poor. It wasn't the right decision. When people see that vulnerability, that candor from you, they are much more willing to be candorous themselves. What a great series of lessons. I know I'm better today because I had this chance to interview Pat, and I hope you are for having listened. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.